When Rose and I arrived, we greeted the 18th century schoolhouse with our house tucked in behind it. After going through the startup procedures and opening the house, we decided to explore the grounds. First thing we noticed was that the stream was running high and hard. It's springtime in the Rockies. The aspen are starting to get their leaves. Flowers are growing and starting to bloom. The snow is starting to melt. Everywhere we went, we saw rapidly flowing streams. We saw them at our house. On the way to the ghost town of St. Elmo. In the woods on BLM property. And on the other side of the mountains near the town of Gunnison. Water was everywhere. Another thing we noticed was that the hummingbirds were back. These hummingbirds make a chirping noise not unlike a cricket. So when they fly by, you can't really see them, but you can definitely hear them.
It's got to be a buck without antlers, because it's pretty big.
We were also greeted by a doe and her young Spike, a soon-to-be Bambi.
What are you doing? Is that a spike, you think?
Oh, yeah.
The mountains viewed from our house were still snow-covered. But an occasional snowstorm would come by and drop more snow. When the sun would come out, all the new snow would melt away. We took a number of trips to explore the area around us, and it was gorgeous. The first trip we took was to a ghost town called St. Elmo. It's located around 10,000 feet and was founded in 1880. They had hummingbird feeders set up at the general store there, and the hummers were everywhere. You could also buy packages of sunflower seeds to feed the chipmunks. The chipmunks were just stuffing their cheeks with as much food as they could cram in them. I did a walking tour, and it was neat to see all the old buildings. I've kind of sped it up a little bit so you don't get too bored. In this area, it looks like it could have been a brothel back in the day. At least I'd like to think it was a brothel. I noticed a few outhouses, and I wondered if they were still in use and how nasty they would be. On our way back, we stopped at an old cemetery. There were people of all ages buried there, the very young to the very old. Many of the headstones were just wood with a number so that the person buried there could be identified. We continued on the road, and it was starting to get a little rough, but the scenery was beautiful. We stopped at an alpine lake and took in the views. Our last stop on our way back was at a very large mountain stream. Like everywhere else, the streams are running hard and fast. The next day we decided to check out the road on BLM property, which is behind our house. We stopped at a couple of places and checked out the scenery. The smell of the pine trees, the sound of the running water, the beautiful aspen touched nearly all of our senses. Next we came down out of the woods and found a beaver dam. There were a number of stumps that had the telltale beaver teeth marks on them. The next day the weather was not so great, so we decided to go to Monarch Pass for a visit. It's only located about 10 miles from our house and around 11,300 feet in elevation. When we got there, we realized that the tram was up and running. This was the first time we've ever seen it happen, so we had to take a ride. The trip up was nice and the views at the top were great. We had 360-degree views of the mountains and it was gorgeous. Our last trip, we decided to go to the other side of the mountain, over Monarch Pass and down towards the town of Gunnison. We found some locations for old mines and potential fossil locations from a Rock County book we had. So we headed towards Gunnison and turned off the road into a valley to search for an old mine. When we found it, it was filled with quartz, feldspar, and several types of micas. As with everywhere we went, the views were gorgeous. Next we headed to a location that promised loads of fossils of brachiopods and early cephalopods. The road went up into the mountains and ended at a campground which was ringed by snow-covered mountains. According to the book, the fossils were located at the top of the ridge to our left, so we began to climb up. But not long into the climb, it became obvious that the trail was going to be covered in snow at places up to 3 feet thick. It's not something we were really prepared for, so we decided to turn back. We got in the car and started our drive back down the mountain. On our way back down, we saw a couple of marmots, which are a large ground mammal similar to woodchucks, but these live at high altitudes. Further down the mountain, the road was blocked by a tree. It wasn't there when we went up, so something had to place it in the middle of the road. We got out and moved it, and that's when we discovered what really had happened. The base of the tree had been chewed through by a beaver. There were teeth marks at the base, and the chewed off pieces were littered around the tree. We were in beaver territory. We had a great time checking out all the local sites. Work was not in the cards for this trip. At least not for me, but Rose did a little bit. In between trips, we relaxed and soaked in the views around our house. Relaxing is what we wanted to do this vacation. But our vacation wasn't over yet. We still had to drive back to Colorado Springs, and on our way back we decided to take the scenic route. Which took us through some more beautiful scenery and through the famous town of Cripple Creek. I don't know if this is the same town referenced by the song, but I believe it's Indian territory because the town was full of gambling casinos. Now at least we can finally say that we've been to Cripple Creek, and we have to say goodbye to Colorado for now. But we will be back.